Hi guys, welcome back. I said that I would film a handful of videos so over the next week I can get them sitting on my laptop and ready to go out automatically because I really want to. The Lord has been blessing this channel even though I've not been working on it, and I think it's just a way that the Lord telling me to keep going and to not be distracted and give up on what He once called me to do, or what He's still calling me to do. So here I am. I'm back, and praise the Lord for the blessing. Even though I've not been here, people have been messaging me, emailing me, and I am so sorry if you have emailed or messaged me ages and ages ago and I have not seen it. I don't know how that even happened, and I can only apologise about that, because I hate it when I miss messages from you guys and you email me for help or prayer, or so I apologise, guys, if I have missed that. And if I have, just give me a nudge and say, yeah, I sent you something, how you sent it, and I'll see if I can find it, because I don't know how that happened. So I have today done chapter 4, I think, of Lambs to the Slaughter, talking about the occult and the Ouija board and how it slowly trickles into school, affects your children. Very, very interesting, actually, that chapter. And now I've started this book, and I understand I've started millions of books, but we'll get through them all. I'm hoping my next recording will be having the heart of Martha, having the heart of Mary in a Martha world, to do as my next recording after this one. So thank you for joining us, guys. I really appreciate it. And this is just a quick 10-minute chapter talking about what is a cult. So I will get into it. This is chapter 2. If you want to see chapter 1, I've made a playlist for it and it will be there. That's also short and sweet. So, what is a cult? An adequate definition of cult evades most people. Webster's Ninth New Collegiate Dictionary 1988 states that a cult represents a religious body that is unorthodox or spurious. It also cites the wider perimeter of devotion to a great person, idea, or thing, a frame of reference to which this book in part ascribes. Ronald Enroth points out that the origin of the word cult can be traced to the Latin cultus, which connotes all that is involved in worship, ritual, emotion, liturgy, and attitude. In Dr. Walter Martin's book, The Kingdom of the Cult, Dr. Charles Braden is quoted as saying, a cult is any religious group which differs significantly in some or more respects as to belief or practice from those religious groups which are regarded as the normative expression of religion in our total culture. Thus, to designate any group as a cult obviously requires a subjective value judgment. Many respectable groups that are admired by society, example Mormons and Baha'is, were considered a repugnant and persecuted during their formation. Who is to say which of today's non-traditional eccentrics will be considered socially acceptable in years to come? These are things that most cults share in common. 1. A centralized authority that tightly structures both philosophy and lifestyle. 2. A we versus they complex pitting the supposed superior insights of the group against a hostile outside culture. 3. A commitment for each member to proselytize intensively the unconverted. And 4. An entrenched isolationism that divorces the devotee from the realities of the world at large. Cultic philosophy is diverse, ranging from the rigidly ascetic to sexually permissive. In the beginning, many groups display sincere expressions of a humble desire to better society and follow God's will. At some point, the founder's teachings are codified into an organized system of revelational authority. Allegiance to the founder's ideals become an absolute requirement. What may have been in one man's honest opinion is then presented as having the weight of the divine endorsement. If such a transformation takes place while the leader is still alive, he usually claims supernatural certifications for his beliefs. What then develops a type of institutional dogmatism and a pronounced intolerance for any position but their own, according to Dr. Walter Martin. Though inherents may exhibit certain typical motivational characteristics, attitude vary from selfish narcissism to abandonment of the ego for communal welfare. The person who seeks out a cult or is ensnared by cult propaganda also fits a composite psychological profile. Conventional solutions and institutions may have struck him as being sterile or unfulfilling. He's looking for a affirming community which he can identify, such as a group, will be all the more appealing if it offers a single idealistic principle around which his entire life can revolve. In a society that is biblically illiterate, the deception of a cult is particularly enticing if it claims to have restored certain truths that have been lost or undiscovered. Loneliness, indecision, despair, and disappointment are the emotional characteristic cult recruiters notice. They approach the unwary with an excessively friendly invitation to a lecture, free meal, weekend workshop, or other activity offering instant solutions to overwhelming problems. Surprisingly enough, few potential cultists bother to inquire about who is extending the offer, what is behind it, and what functions will take place. Vague answers are seldom challenged, leaving the recruiter an unassailable opportunity to obscure his intentions. Sorry, guys. Excuse me, guys. I had to sneeze. Cults generally attract prospects with an outpouring of attention and affection and so-called love bombing technique. Feeling not doctrine is the lure. In fact, the belief structure is seldom mentioned in the beginning. Cult leaders know that once an initiate has been reconditioned to accept their particular worldview, and as soon as he feels a sense of meaningful belonging, his mind will be ready to accept any teaching, including a belief that the leader represents God. Approval, acceptance, belonging, authority, all those things that were missing are supplied by the cult. Motivation is generated by rewards for excessive zeal. Critical thinking is discouraged and corporate identification with some larger than life mission as conveyed by the leader causes the member to equate what is good for the cult as being for him. When the recruit's mind shifts to neutral, the period of intensive indoctrination begins. The effectiveness of this tactic is often enhanced by sensory deprivation, extreme amounts of physical activity coupled with fatigue, severance of all ties with family and friends, and forsaking all belongings and material possessions. In short time, the initiate becomes emotionally and spiritually dependent on the cult for decisions, directions, and even the physical necessities of life. The outward world appears more and more threatening. Finally, his mind snaps, and the sudden drastic alteration of personality in all its many forms takes place. Young adult cult recruits are the least likely to consider thoughts of abandoning the group. Severing the cult fostered dependency would mean having to cope with hardships and fend for themselves in a hostile world. Any consideration of leaving immediately conjures guilt, feelings of forsaking God's calling, falling into Satan's hands, or even worse, risking the wrath and judgment of God. Given the current anti-cult climate, new targets of cults see their future as one of involuntary slavery and physical domination. Before joining an exotic sect, one should be aware of what could result: neurosis, psychosis, suicidal tendencies, guilt, identity confusion, paranoia, hallucinations, loss of free will, intellectual sterility, and diminished capacity of judgment. It will be much easier to avoid such consequences by identifying and recognizing the following psychological forms of cult coercion. 1. Absolute loyalty. Allegiance to the sect is demanded and enforced by actual or veiled threats to one's body or eternal spiritual condition. Altered diet. Depriving one of essential nutrients and forcing a low-protein diet can lead to disorientation and emotional susceptibility. That's interesting, isn't it, when the world constantly goes on about we're eating too much meat and we should abstain from meats, which the Bible tells you is a doctrine of the devil. 3. Chanting and meditation. Objective intellectual import as avoided by countering anti-cult questions with repetitious songs and chants. 4. Conformity. Dress, language, names and interests take on the sameness that erodes individuality. 5. Doctrinal confusion. Incomprehensible truths are more readily accepted when presented in a complex fashion that encourages rejection of logical thought. 6. Exclusivity. Those outside cults are viewed as spiritually inferior, creating an exclusive and self-righteous we versus they attitude. Financial involvement. All or part of one's personal assets may be donated to the cult, increasing a vested interest in sticking with it and lessening the chance of returning to former vocation. 8. Hypnotic states. Inducing a highly susceptible state of mind may be accomplished by chanting, repetitious singing, or meditation. 9. Isolation from outside. Diminished perception of reality results when one is physically separated from friends, society, and rational frame of reference in which one was previously functioned. 10. Lack of privacy. Reflective, critical thinking is impossible in a setting where cult members are seldom left unattended, and the ego's normal emotional defensive mechanisms can easily be stripped away by having the new member share personal secrets that can later be used for intimidation. 11. Love bombing. Physical affection and constant contrived attention can give a false sense of camaraderie. 12. Mega communication. Long, confusing lectures can be an effective tool if the inductee is bombarded with glib rhetoric and catchphrases. 13. New relationships. Marriage to another cult member and the destruction of past family relationships integrates one fully into the cult family. Nonsensical activities. Games and other activities with no apparent purpose leave one dependent upon the group or leader to give direction and order. 15. Pavilion control. Pavlovian control. Behavior modification by alternating reward and punishment leads to confusion and dependency. 16. Peer pressure. By exploiting one's desire for acceptance, doubts about cult practices can be overcome by offering a sense of belonging to an affirming community. 17. Sensory deprivation. Fatigue coupled with prolonged activity can make one vulnerable to otherwise offensive beliefs and suggestions. 18. Unquestioning submission. Acceptance of cult practices is achieved by discouraging any questions or natural curiosity that may challenge what the leaders propagate. 19. Value rejection. As the recruit becomes more integrated into the cult, he is encouraged to denounce the values and beliefs of his former life. The profiles and techniques presented in this chapter will not always be apparent with all cults or all adherents. One group may practice economic exploitation, while other allows its members to maintain a lifestyle that is financially independent from the cult. Certain cults entice members who are curious about their secret doctrines, while others openly evangelize by public propagation of their beliefs. Few cults qualify for this category. Most groups generally adhere to one or more of the characteristics that has been described. And it's so funny talking about cults actually, because I watched a program called Nature Boy. I think it was on Netflix, and that was a cult. And it shows you like how we lure them in, and then where it started, and where it was just offering just peace and being at one with the earth, and living naturally, and how we should, to what it ended up as. And it's the same with all these cults, isn't it? And how they lure in. So there's quite a few cool documentaries actually on Netflix that you could go watch and give yourself an idea of how these people work, if you haven't already have an idea of how that happens. They don't come dressed looking like, they're going to destroy you. They come looking like they're there to help you, which is not what Satan does. So thank you so much for watching. I'll keep this short and sweet. I will be back with the next chapter, which will be, what's it called? A Christian Perspective on Cults. So that will be the next chapter, and I will see you all in the next video, guys.